Welcome back to The Wild Holy, the podcast where we explore the sacred in all its wild, untamed forms. I'm Faith.
And I'm Stephanie. And each week we bring you stories of transformation, mystery, and deep encounters with the holy.
Today, we're honored to welcome Sue, a woman whose life took a profound turn after a near death experience. Sue's journey has redefined her understanding of the divine, taking her from ideas of faith she once held to a living, breathing experience of the sacred that she says changed everything.
We are so grateful to have her here with us to share her story. So, Sue, thank you so much for coming on the Wild Holy. We are delighted that you're here. And we'd love to begin by getting a sense of your early life, including your spiritual tradition.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. Um, I am a child who grew up in a dysfunctional home, so much so that I was removed by the state of Connecticut and became a ward of the state, and I was placed in a lovely, lovely foster home. So I had a very happy childhood, the second half. And I've attended church pretty much my whole life. When I was very young, it was an Episcopalian, very traditional church. Didn't really get much out of it other than there were a lot of rules. But when I moved in with my foster family, we started going to congregational churches. And I felt more of a community and felt very much like a member of the church, and my being there mattered. And as an adult, I continued the congregational tradition with my children. I have 4 adult children. Did some church shopping when we got some ministers whose leadership I didn't quite agree with. One minister was not welcoming to LGBTQ people. And I was in a church that was in a financial mess, and there was fighting over money, and just wasn't the kind of uplift that I expected from a church. Switched to another congregational church, which had financial stability and a lovely minister who retired soon after my arrival. And again, they hired a minister who wasn't really leading in the direction I wanted to go. It was more of a like a beware of this or you'll end up not being loved by God, kind of a traditional, very old-fashioned kind of thought process. But my children each were confirmed in that church. Well, they went through confirmation classes, and so 3 of them all decided, that's it, I'm done with organized religion. So they got through confirmation, making an adult choice in their own journey. My oldest daughter, she's the firstborn. She's going to do what firstborn do. She's stuck with it, but she doesn't go to church now. She's in her 30s. But I don't go to church either because I don't have my children, so my little family group isn't there. My husband, we've been married 40 years, very spiritual, but never a traditional organized religion person. So I didn't really want to go alone. And I wasn't comfortable really. There wasn't a good fit with the leadership of the churches. So I kind of have not been going and miss the community. I do miss
You're not alone.
Yeah. So that's my story of church. Religion's always been important to me. My spiritual connection to what I used to call God. I mean, I don't believe in a man in the sky, but there's definitely a power that's been in my life.
So that's I'm sure will be a very familiar story for a lot of people. And the next part of your story isn't so familiar to everybody. So do you want to kind of set the stage for where you were in your life when as you call it, your spiritual experience unfolded?
Yeah. So when I was 20, I was in a coma and on life support for 3 days. And I got there because I had a sinus infection that needed treatment. So I got my amoxicillin, and it didn't seem to be making me feel better. And over time, it actually caused me to get very sick because I didn't know it at the time, but I'm allergic to amoxicillin. And the way it ultimately presented itself is I had a seizure, my lungs collapsed. My boyfriend, who's my husband now at the time, was at the house. I was at home. My dad was home. I was home, and Gary. And they heard a thud in the bathroom, and that was me. So Gary ran across the street to get the neighbor who's the medical examiner for the state, who came over and said, she's dead. So I wasn't dead, but I was not in good shape. The paramedics arrived, brought me to the hospital, and I was on life support for 3 days, but unconscious. But so during that time, I am aware of feeling peace and serenity. And I was in a moment in my life with my husband where we were like, like a Romeo and Juliet. We just need to be together all the time. It's a brand new relationship, deeply falling in love. And he was crying. I remember him crying, even, subconsciously, I guess. But I remember feeling at peace with letting him go. And knew it would be okay, and knew that I wasn't going to be separated from him. I knew I was going to transcend space and time and stay connected to him through what I've now called the love force. Without a doubt, it was absolutely in my head that this is it. This is what connects all of us beyond space and time. And I saw how short life is and how eternal love is. And it was just a wonderful, peaceful feeling. And I felt the same way with any relationship in my life. But he was the hardest one to feel at peace letting go. But I did. But then I came to and recovered. They didn't really know what I was sick with at the time. So I went home, and my husband and I would be driving around. I would look out the window and I'd say, I know that guy. I know that woman. I know that dog. I felt connected to every living thing. And he kept telling me, no, you've never met those people. You don't know who they are. I said, yes, I do. I know who these people are. So that connection faded over time. But the connection with what I call the love force is still evident. And I see it in messengers, like birds are my messengers. So I will be having challenges in my life, and birds will present themselves. So when there's two stories that really stand out. One was we had a family pet that died. So Coco died. We had her for, I think, 11 years, maybe not that long, but all 4 kids grew up with this dog, and they were devastated. And the day that she died, they all went up into their rooms and hid out and just cried. And a northern harrier hawk landed in a bush right out front, out of a window in the living room. We never get that bird in our neighborhood or in this area that I've seen. And it was peering into the window, just looking at me on the couch. And then I thought, well, maybe this is a message. Maybe this is a message of love. And so I went up and I got my kids to come down, and they came down one at a time. And we looked at the hawk and said goodbye to Coco. And then it wasn't until the 4th child came down, and I can't remember if it was my youngest or my next to youngest, but after the 4th child came down, that's when the hawk flew away. But it stayed there, I think, a good 10 minutes, just looking in the window. So to me, that was like, okay, all right, love continues, and what we love is gone, but that love is not gone. And the other profound bird has been a great blue heron. So I actually have a tattoo on my shoulder of a great blue heron, because he's always got my back. My husband is the baby of 8, and as an adult, his siblings were dying of cancer. And in 4 years' time, he lost 3 siblings to cancer. And he spiraled into a depression, and I was very worried about him, really worried about him. And the moments where I would be talking to myself or crying in the car, a great blue heron would appear, and it would be out of place. Like It several times a great blue heron flew across, like eye level across my windshield.
My
Um,
gosh.
I was at work, and through this depression of his lasted a couple of years, and in that time I worked in front of a beautiful window that looked south, and if I was worried about him and thinking about him, if I looked out of the window, there'd be a great blue heron.
Hmm.
Um, and when his brother Mark passed, um, he was cremated, and he was a fisherman, and Gary had great memories of fishing with him. And Gary and my son went to put Mark's ashes into his favorite fishing hole, and there was a great blue heron there.
Of
And so we
course.
took a picture. They took a picture of it, and that's the bird that I got on my shoulder. Um, and I just saw one yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, when I was talking to Stephanie about this podcast, after that conversation, I went for a walk, and there was a great blue heron standing on a rock in the middle of the river.
Amazing.
So they're little, I don't see it as, oh, it's just a bird. I see it as a reminder that love is protecting me and is always here and will always get to me no matter what's going on.
I have this hypothesis, and tell me if you feel in line with this, but I think that these things happen to all of us, to everybody, but some of us have these certain instances where like it's like a windshield that gets like wiped down and cleaned off so we can start to see them and notice them a little bit more. I don't know if that's how you feel,
I
that you
agree.
just are
I
wide.
agree. I
Yeah.
feel I feel tuned in. But I will say that the behavior is so unusual, that I think it's deliberate. It's not just,
Mm.
I don't know. I feel I'm getting a direct message. Not that it's always there and all of a sudden I saw it. I feel like it's a
Yeah.
direct message.
That maybe there's always loved ones on another plane or another place, another space, something that loves us deeply, communicating with us and wishing us
Yes.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
How neat.
Yeah.
This is so neat that you've been able to identify these things and you're seeing them. So the great blue heron for you, like what does that seem to indicate for you when you see one? Is it like you're being affirmed of whatever is happening at the moment, or like an indication to just pay attention? Like how do you take it, or just kind of a miraculous showing?
It gives me a sense of peace and calm. This close to what I felt when I was sick, when I was 20. Not as intense, but I feel like, I'm a little bit of a control freak. My kids would tell you I'm a lot. Um, but I am assured that I don't need to be in control, and it's going to be okay. And I can get peace and calm from that. It doesn't give me answers. It doesn't give me direction. It just says, yep, it's okay. Which is important for someone who wants to be in control to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, isn't that funny how kids always have that ability to just like point out things very clearly to you?
Yes, yes. And I was a middle school teacher and principal, so being in control was in my mind.
Well,
Or it was in my mind, it was important, but in
and
reality,
helpful.
never existed.
Right, right, right. You just kind of like have to hold everything and as
Yes.
best you can, right? Oh my. There's a lot to I didn't want to cut you off, Sue. I don't know if I diverged you to where you were going. Did you
No, this is,
touch on everything?
I think
Okay.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to just, if you don't mind, just there's so much I want to ask you questions about, but for go in chronological order, maybe start back with your childhood.
Mhm.
And I was wondering, do you think that your kind of less than ideal childhood helped attune you to God or the divine? Oh, by the way, do you use a certain word for God or the divine, or what do you call that love force that you were, or do you just say love force?
I used to call it God. It's just the connotation of the great white guy in the sky is
Yeah,
so adverse to what I believe. So as a child, that was my word. Um, as an adult, it's the love force.
that's great. I like that. So did you feel like like less than ideal childhood like opened up that kind of avenue for feeling held because
Yeah.
that was there, or so you don't feel like you had like an inherent alignment with God initially, or you felt like that hardship helped foster growth
There are
relationship.
moments in my childhood where a voice, truly a voice, came into my head and made me do something to protect myself.
Wow.
So, um, like leave the house now.
Wow.
Right. And, so to be safe, I actually was living in a dysfunctional house for a long time. And when I was 15 is when I became a ward of the state. So I was old enough to be a critical thinker and a problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
But I recall a voice telling me, leave the house now. And I went to a friend's house. And when you run away and you're 15, the police bring you home.
Mm.
And then shortly after I was home, the voice said, leave the house now and go to the police station. So people ask me, how did you know to go to the police station? Like a voice just brought me there. It just brought me there. Um, and I plunked myself down, and these adults are looking at me like, what do you want us to do? I said, well, I want you to help me. Somebody
Wow.
brought me here and you guys have to help. So there was that voice when I was 15 was clear. Younger than that, I don't think I felt that clear guidance. But definitely before my near death experience, I was being guided and protected.
Interesting. And did you have any like spiritual practices or any ways that you would connect with God?
So the routine of going to church, knowing hymns, music, I find music a way to connect with spirituality.
Hmm.
Um, the rhythms of routines at church, I felt supportive. But outside of those Sunday experiences, I didn't usually like call on that. I pray at conversations with God when I was a child. Um, but I didn't reach for a passage in the Bible to read when I needed it, or um, yeah. And I read spiritual based books, and there are a couple of biblical passages I really appreciate,
Hmm.
but I don't look for the answers in the traditional way.
Hmm.
I'm wondering, Sue, did you tell anybody about your experience of profound peace and calm when you were in the coma?
Yes, I've told pretty much anybody, and I get mixed reviews. People who were there and knew what happened knew that some kind of miracle happened, because the guy declared me dead.
The
Okay.
medical examiner.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Who
don't
does
think
it
he
for a
really
living? Yeah.
examined me. I'm not quite sure,
Oh, that's true.
but I get mixed reviews. People who know me well trust me, and take my word for it that there's a love force. I think my children believe me that I have evidence, because I'm adamant that I have no doubt, and I'm evident. It's evident. It's there. Um, and they see signs of connectivity through nature, mostly with love and people who have passed. My children look at butterflies as represent their grandmother. Like messages, if a butterfly passes their path, they're like, yeah, grandma just came and gave me a hug. And
Yeah.
but then there are people who say, well, how many meds were you on when you had that experience? You know what?
You're right.
So
Right.
uh, I don't, I don't think it was the meds. I don't think they gave me any meds. They were trying to figure out what was wrong with me.
I was going to say, I mean, so you're in a coma, which means you are unconscious, right? People in comas are
Yeah,
unconscious.
yeah.
But what we're talking about is some part of your consciousness,
Mhm.
experiencing reality. I know I asked you this before, Sue, but I am kind of interested as people, I'm just thinking about the people who are listening to this now. Why you? Why do you think you had this experience? Um, is this something that other people can tap into the love force? Can other people experience that? Maybe not in exactly the same way, but why do you think it's you that's had this experience, and can other folks like tap into what you've experienced?
I don't know why it was me. um, and yes, I think anyone could experience it. Um, I have a scientific background. I was a science teacher for years and always looked for proof and evidence. So I think for the people who aren't able to tap into it, they're looking for proof and evidence. And I had proof and evidence. I experienced proof and evidence, and I convey that to people. Um, but I think that might get in people's way. Um, I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when I experience it. There is a leap of faith required to believe in
Mhm.
it if you don't have the experience. I try my best to tell people it's real. I can comfort people when people are passing. I was with 3 women in my lifetime who passed, all after a full life, like in their 80s and 90s. Um, and it was a beautiful experience as they passed. They were surrounded by love and entered into love, and the people in the room believed that that was happening.
And you could assure them of that. I bet, and
Yes.
I bet you did.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And then after they passed, these butterflies, my kids truly believe that's a message from grandma. Birds, other people believe that birds are messengers of loved ones, and I'm not saying reincarnated loved ones. I'm just saying they're
Right.
reminders of the love still there.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think we're more complex than just, the elements that make us up. So,
Well, I think we're all kind of living in this very materialistic world that, with all the good things that come with, scientific methodologies, so that requires evidence, hard proof evidence, material evidence. And yet there still is this experiential element to things that um, give us this knowing, a deep knowing that's more than just that,
Mhm.
scientific evidence. So I think it is always going to be difficult for someone who hasn't had that experience to really take it in. And
I, I,
yeah.
I was just, my husband and I celebrated our anniversary in Maine recently, and I watched a little pink balloon that got loose drift into the sky. And I was journaling at the time, and it disappeared out of sight, but it was still there. And what I wrote in my journal was, you don't have to see things to know that they're there.
Mhm.
And that little pink balloon was my little, I texted my sister that. She goes, "Oh, that's so great." I said, "It's there. I can't see
Yeah.
it, but it's there."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I was just thinking about the 19th century psychologist William James has this hypothesis that the brain is a filter for consciousness as opposed to being the generator of consciousness. So that way of looking at the world would then seem to clarify and make more sense out of an experience that like what you had.
Mhm.
That even though in your comatose state where your brain wasn't functioning as normal, your consciousness still obviously was there in some capacity, even noting the feelings of the individuals in the room, and your own individualness was still existent there. Being willing to let go of these other loved ones in the room if you had to leave. There are ways that we can start to look at the world that will make room for these kinds of experiences. And
So we call Faith the mystical librarian because she will pull up from the depths of her consciousness, William James and all kinds of theologians and philosophers. So thank you for that.
oh, you're welcome.
Right. No, it's lovely. Well, I guess this is where my sort of brain goes, which is thinking about, it's interesting that this podcast is coming, into life at this time, at least in this country when it's being recorded, like a lot of things are going down. And I think from a variety of different angles, a lot of folks have a deep sense that we're in the midst of something,
Mhm.
in the midst of transition, in the midst of consciousness shifting, in the midst of the old things passing away. Some new things are emerging, but what are those things? It's like just a deeply anxious age. And I sort of wonder with stories like yours whether there's sort of a gift of service in telling the story. Um, a lot of people grow up with a deep fear of death, for example, or they, I don't know, just thinking about the number of people that I've, accompanied through their journey into, I would say, eternal life, the life after life. And mostly mostly it's a beautiful gift. Um, and there also are some folks who have unfinished business or unresolved wounds or
Mhm.
just it would be hard to imagine sitting at their bedside, um, what they're kind of taking with them, all that they're taking with them. That's not maybe not so positive. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah.
Good.
Um, so, uh, whatever we experience in our short little lives is so minuscule to this all-encompassing force of love that I've felt. Um, as bad as things have been in my life and as bad as things are today in many people's lives, it's still okay. And our lives are so short. Um, and our spirit is so, just vast, and it's going to continue on. And maybe there's this little lesson that each of us has to learn through this difficulty. And I don't know why we have difficult experiences, but there's no reason to hold on to it. There's just no, it does, there's no reason, because when you pass, all of that goes away. It's just love. And I think I've mentioned to you the difference for me, the opposite of love is fear. So I think people are either living in fear or they're living in love. And even people who spend their days living in fear, when they pass, they will be encompassed by love. Um, so when my mom
Mhm.
passed, she was on a respirator and she wasn't speaking, but I know she was aware. But it wasn't until I said to her, Dad's going to be okay. We've got him. He's going to be okay. Then she passed. Like those words, I think that was something she was holding on to, because she was also a control person, and took care of him and was, managed everything for him, and was fearful that he would be lost without her. And once I conveyed to her, he's going to be okay. He's going to be fine. It was within seconds she passed. So I think if anything, if I can share that with people, if I can talk to people about, you know, I mean, I'm not saying I don't worry about things and fret. I do. I worry a lot, um, especially having children out in the world and now grandchildren arriving. The worry just compounds. But ultimately, I have to remember there are things bigger than me that are going to take care of us, and we're all going to be okay.
That is so
Uh,
beautiful. Oh, go ahead, Faith. Yeah.
I was just gonna note and the distinction you were making between the love force and fear, and I wanted to see if you could define like if the love force were to come and tell us like three things, what are the three things that love force has taught you or told you?
That's a good question. Um, well, I'm hearing my husband's voice. This too shall pass, which is actually his mother's voice. Um, so things, if we're experiencing something that we're very upset about, or it will pass, it will be different in time. It will change. The intensity will go away. So that's one thing, I guess. Um, and I think if you don't, fear just is you're just the love, you're not tuned into it. It's there. There's like a cloud between you and seeing the love. So it's just a
Uh,
matter of getting that cloud out of there. I don't know, figuring out what is it that you're afraid of. And
The love is always there.
it's always there.
Yeah.
It's always there. So we're born, love is we're not everybody. Sometimes there's horrible stories, but um, like love is just so pure. I watch my grandson's little face, and he is pure joy and love. And then he's going to go through his bumps through life, and he's going to either continue to be loving and pure and happy, or balance it out with some cynicism. And um, but you know, it's there. It's in all of us.
Yeah. Do you have are you, since that experience, have you just been able to identify it like right away if you see it? Because I don't know, I'm sure you've experienced this with kids, having kids that just, it's like, oh, that's like what pure love is, right? It's like
Yeah.
this experience of just like you'd give anything for that kid.
Yeah.
And did you feel like it, having that experience just helped you see it in everyday life?
Yeah. Kids are wonderful because they're more transparent than adults.
Yeah.
um, and they'll let you know if what you're doing is making a difference pretty much right away. And the, the kids who need you the most are the hardest ones to love usually. They're doing their best to push you away.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
This is a principal slash teacher talking, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The prickly ones need the most love. That's my little motto. But they will let you know when they've put their fear aside. I mean, you see it and you know it. And I think maybe adults get, um, I don't know, they lack trust to take that step.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I have a friend who's on the opposite end of the political spectrum from me, and she lives in a lot of fear. And I haven't been able to bring her over to the side of love. But I still love her in these very interesting conversations that we're
Mhm.
having. Um, so, even people who are on opposite sides of things, if you can find the love in the middle, it can help both of you.
Right.
Yeah.
I've often thought that it is genuinely love and the absence of love. That really is the kind of key to reality itself. And that's actually kind of an Augustinian idea. I'll play the role of the mystic
Go
librarian
for
for a
it.
second.
Woo!
Yeah, no, it's true. It's the idea of sin, if you want to call it that, not being the presence of evil, but being the absence of love.
Hmm.
And I have to say, so I didn't mention this to you, Sue, but I practice centering prayer. That's kind of been my spiritual practice for however many years now. And the whole practice is letting go. And the idea, I think, again, is the same. It's sort of an apophatic practice, meaning that it's not about, building a tower to the sky.
Hmm.
It's really about letting go and letting go and letting go. All the things that sort of have accreted over time, the crustiness and everything that gathers over time, just continuing to like let it go, let it
Hmm.
go, let it go. And I was saying to someone the other day, it's sort of ironic slash perfect that my spiritual practice is letting go because it's the one I need the most. It is absolutely. I'll have something like it for the rest of my life. But yeah, so like a very very deep glimpse into big R reality is what I'm hearing. Something of your experience has led you there, and I'm glad you kind of. I was going to ask you. You got here anyway, but I was glad that you um, you know, fleshed out a little bit the relationship that you've had with control versus like, this love force. Given that I think control at its root is about fear, maybe,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Understandable given especially your life experiences, your early experiences, formative experiences of life. And that the love force is almost like a frequency. Um, it's sort of some deep energetic frequency that you tapped into by virtue of your near death experience. And so this is a similar question to face, but I'm kind of curious, and this is an open question for any of us, I guess. Most people don't want or need to have a near-death experience to get here. So I'm curious about the ways that you have found to tap into that frequency of love force for yourself.
Um, like if something doesn't present itself externally, how do I reach it internally? Um, so meditation helps. But the only thing meditation does for me is it calms my rapid thinking brain, right? It gives me control over the racing of the mind. It doesn't put ideas in there. It's that whole letting go of, oh, notice and let go, right? Um, so meditation helps. Um, Music brings me there. Some music brings me, moves me in ways that I just can't put words to. Um,
Do you
and
have what is it about music that kind of opens up for you? Do you feel like it's the melody, the harmony, the musicians singing it or playing it?
all of it.
Yeah.
Or memories, right? Having a memory attached to a
The
song.
associations that come along with it.
Yeah.
It is a carrier, a transmitter of those
Yeah.
associations, isn't it?
Yeah. Um, there's my children, I've told them when I pass, I don't really care about whatever they do, but if they're going to do any kind of service, they have to hand out kazoos and everyone has to play Beethoven's Ode to Joy. Like that, that's
I
all
like
I
it.
want. You can do
That's
whatever you
awesome.
want beyond that. But I think
Uh,
music is powerful, and you can play the right song to get in a good cry. You can play the right song to get up and dance. You can. Um, I feel like it connects to my spirit in ways. Yeah, yeah. Music's
mhm.
important in my life. It's been important in my family's life. When my foster mom passed, um, I don't know if you've heard of a group called the New World Trio. But
Oh,
they composed it's a trio, and they composed a piece of music in her memory, and it's been performed a couple of times in different audiences, and it's interesting to see how it moves everybody. Like again, there's her spirit in the room, touching everyone who hears it, thanks to these three musicians. So
yeah,
kind of a little gateway into the love force.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's a vehicle for sure. Powerful one.
So, Sue, is there anything else? Oh, go ahead, Faith. Do you
No,
have a question?
I had another thought, this idea of the love force and pondering the things that the love force has taught you. Um, and we're considering what love is as opposed to fear, its opposite. Um, it just seems to me that that love is less of a obligation and duty,
Mm.
but it's a full acceptance and just of what is. I find it interesting that meditation helps and to arrive at this loving space because again that's like a letting go of and being able to just accept all that is as it is. So that's just been really helpful for me in relationships in um, life in general is just that's what the releasing is helpful for because it gets you to that state of love and of
Mhm.
just accepting what is. Yeah.
I
So
also think love connects you with people. Right.
I think so.
Love doesn't exist in isolation, I don't think.
Mm,
I think it
yeah, I think you're
needs to
right.
relate, right? And
Right.
fear, I think, is more of like your ego saying, pull away, be on your own, protect yourself. Um,
Mm.
but love
Well,
depends on connections.
like you experienced with your students, being able, I think, because they would open up when they felt like they were going to be accepted and it was okay
Hmm.
to be themselves because they would be accepted, I imagine.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
So we're so the so love is connection. It's moving away from fear, from control, from feeling separate and being separate, or treating yourself like you need to protect something. There's really nothing to protect against. And the love force is the deepest and truest thing that you know. It feels really real. It feels more real than anything else, maybe.
Mhm.
And that there are ways in which the pink balloons, the invisible world, makes itself known.
Mhm.
Visibly, sometimes in the form of balloons and birds, and but sometimes invisibly. Um, this is exactly why Faith and I started this podcast, because we wanted to lift up the experiences of people who we see in the grocery store that we've known for years, but we don't always know these stories. At least that's why I am interested in these stories, because it isn't so much about the sensationalism of the near-death experience so much as
Mhm.
what that reveals about reality, as wild as it is. And I know that we haven't quite talked as much in this conversation about, integrating. Well, what I've sensed from you, Sue, is that you didn't so much have to integrate your experience into a previous try to reconcile your experience with a previous belief system, because you had experiences already
Mhm.
of the love force to draw upon, so that was already kind of part of your reality. So it's not so much that the near-death experience was like a record scratch in your life.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it was dramatic, I'm sure, in a lot of different ways, but it didn't really interrupt or record scratch your life so much as it kind of deepened your own sense of what's true and real. Is that right?
Yep. That's right. Yeah.
And, Faith and I could talk about, you know, profound, mystical, wild, holy experiences from the Bible. I mean, we don't even have to leave the Christian tradition
Mm-mm.
to find those examples. But I think that for both Faith and I, we grew up in traditions, and Faith, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, that we're very suspicious of uh of things like this. Very suspicious of. I mean, I grew up in a tradition where it was like jokey about Catholicism. That was the other. Those Catholics across the street. I mean, it sounds so old school and so
Yeah.
19th century when I say it out loud. I'm telling you. That those were things that I've heard, like don't get into witch stuff. Don't get into tarot. Like don't explore. Don't explore. So I think the
Mhm.
podcast and you being our first guest is like the perfect entree into this whole conversation we want to have.
Well, I'm honored to be your first
Yeah,
guest. I hope you can find many people who have experiences like this.
I hope so as well. I don't know if Stephanie shared with you, but last year was my first year at Yale Divinity School, and so I've been taking all these amazing like mind-opening classes, and I got to read a bit of a book by a theologian named John Thetominal, who wrote a book called Circling the Elephant. And he's a comparative theologian, and in his book he describes how important it is, and why comparative theology is so important is because it takes various traditions and gets them talking with each other while still holding the value in each one. Like Christians still hold to their Christian tradition and yet honor a Buddhist way of looking at things. And so you can learn the back and forth. And so, in a similar vein, like this podcast is offering that in a more particular scope, but through the individual as opposed to a full on religion. So, I'm really glad that we get to have your perspective on the big elephant of reality that is that we can never fully grasp on our own. So I'm really looking forward, as you said, Stephanie, to having lots of other perspectives and we can get a bigger glimpse of it anyhow.
Yeah. Well, it's all around us. You might not see it, but it's there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Sue. And if there's anything, a parting set of words or message or anything you want to leave us with as we
Um,
come to a close. Yeah.
just to pull together the traditional religion and my personal experience, I think I shared with you, I listened to the Pope's first mass and his statement about we need to build bridges
Mhm.
is really what it's all about. It's we need to find ways to connect. So there's the man in charge of probably a very traditional model of religion, pretty much saying the same thing. We just have to love each other, right? That's all
Mhm.
it we need. That'll fix everything.
Mhm.
And it's gonna the prickly ones need the most love.
The prickly ones need the most love. Well, I'll try to remember that in the hard moments.
Yeah.
I've had some this week. Yeah, it's always relevant.
Always relevant indeed. Oh,
Well, thank you, Sue, for this conversation. And um, we just look forward to, you know, more conversations like this. And for our audience, thank you for tuning in to this conversation. We'll have more of the Wild Holy soon.